Welcome to Larp Academia, and today we're going to talk about using two-handed weapons in Belegarth. Now, before we get into it, obviously this is an illegal weapon for Belegarth. It needs more padding, but I've used quite a few two-handed weapons in different LARPs, and when I've been able to use a two-handed weapon in Belegarth, kind of impressed some people. So I would like to give you some tips on what I've been able to do that impresses people, and some important tips from people who are admittedly better than I am with two-handed weapons. Now, before we get into the video, this is in response to people liking the archery tips and wanting more. If you want any tips or anything else, then don't forget to leave a comment below and tell me what you actually want to learn about. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell so that you can stay informed on those comments and videos and questions that you've asked about, since we will be going over and backtracking at different LARPs as well. But today we are talking about how to use a two-handed weapon in Belegarth. Now, this is a glaive in most LARPs. While glaives do technically exist in Belegarth, technically only, they aren't seen very often. The reason being is that this is an example of what a glaive would be in some other LARPs that are lighter hitting and everything else where just touch counts. But in Belegarth, we need that solid contact. We can't just, brush and kind of consider it okay. At least in most areas. You need to have that solidity to it. So, in order to make sure we have solidity, two-handed weapons that can slash need to have a higher weight than two-handed weapons that just poke. The poking weapons, the stabbing weapons, are called spears usually, and they have about this much padding, only here. Well, maybe a bit more because it's doubled up so that it can be okay to poke. But spears have a very short tip, are covered, and just poke. Now, these spears are extremely good because you're able to poke in on enemy lines. Why you would have two-handed weapons is because of reach. Now, if you've noticed something, I'm constantly poking and staying far away. In other videos, I have to step closer and I have to get closer in order to actually hit you. This would be the case with most weapons, but with spearmen and for other two-handed weapons, most people just lean on that range and might lean in a little bit, but that's it. They don't use their bodies to make a quicker poke. Now, as you can see, this is a slow poke. It's not really good, but this is a quicker poke. It's much, much faster. And if you are poking with a spear and you are trying to pierce people or find those gaps, you need to be quick. Well, there are two ways of going about it. You can either take your time and kind of focus in and then just stab that area, stab that opening that you see, or you can ABP, always be poking. Now, always be poking is the thought process where you're trying to just poke and create openings and not really hit someone. If you hit someone, that's okay, an interesting development, but that's not what you're going for. You're going for them paying so much attention to you that it creates openings. That's what ABP always is about, is just creating those openings. And if you create those openings, let's say I just keep poking this person to the side, then I'm able to make them focus on me, focus over here, and then, well, bap, a swordsman's able to stab them, or another two-handed user. Now, ABP is great for that, but it doesn't really land you kills. You can go with more the snipe version, where you just kind of wait, you have it ready, you're looking around, and then just pop. And how I did that is I used my hips to twist, my shoulder went with it, and instead of just shoulder, which is not very effective, you would go with your shoulder and hip just naturally pop as it goes. And that makes a quick shot and you're able to snipe that area. Now, these are two completely different methods that it really depends on what you're doing. Online, you may see that there's another spearman, or you may want to try to create an opening, so you just start poking around. And at other times, you can see that they're a bit distracted. There's an arrow coming, you wait for that arrow for them to block it, and then pop, you just go and you stab them. But as a spear user, you want to be using that range. Because if someone gets close to you, I mean, with a spear, with a glaive, you have a bit of a chance because you can slash as you go around. Any way I go, I can still come down. I can still do something. But if this is a spear, I can't slash. And even if I go here, I naturally stab. So with a two-handed sword, I can't do that. And in Belegarth, our weapons are usually a bit heavier. Even spears are a bit heavier. So in order to do this, well, I mean, it's not going to work out well. And the only way that that would work really is if you have a glaive. So if someone gets up close to you, you're dead. That's why you want to stay in your line or stay with a shieldman to protect you. Because if you see right here, I don't have a lot of defense. And if a bow hits me, well, even if I block with my pole, it's not a shield, so even if I block, it'll still kill me. So I'm very susceptible to arrows. I'm very susceptible to anyone getting close. And really, spears are definitely best used with a group of people, preferably in a line. So those are some important tips to keep in mind. To figure out what you're doing. ABP, always be poking to get their attention if you're going to go for those stabs. And if you do so, don't just do a lazy stab like this. Use your hips, go in, and go with that motion. Again, most sword fighters, they have to close that distance, and they naturally use their body a bit more. That's more shoulder, but I still have to step and use a little bit of my hip. If for poles, we tend to get lazy, so we just start poking and we don't use that power from your hip. In fact, if you do have a spear and you are a spear user, just try it. Just try swinging with your hip and just letting your shoulder follow. Don't even use your shoulder. Just try that and you'll see the immense difference in power that you're able to do. And it'll allow you to have a whole new array of opportunities to just poke and kill people. One other thing that spear users are able to do is there are these two-handed weapon pole wars. What I mean by that is I am trying to poke them, I'm trying to kill them, and that's great if I'm the only pole, but I mean, I have one, so the enemy could have one too. And when they have a pole, it becomes more of a pole fight, where you use that range and you do try to snipe that enemy pole if you can, since there's this little no man's land that's possibly there. Your shieldmen try to protect you, but really it's on you to outfox the other pole. And if they're trying to snipe, you may actually take your pole and just push it out of the way and then turn and stab into them or turn and stab into someone else. But you want to control the range. You want to control who has the pole. And for these pole wars, I've seen quite a few things. Quite a few not so good tactics. The main problem that I've seen is that I have a smaller pole. It's not a 15-foot war pole. When they bring it down, well, they're gonna knock away my pole. What you want to do if you have a shorter range pole is try to keep their pole at bay. You're probably not gonna kill them, but you want to keep their pole at bay. And how you do so is you deflect. You can't outright just push it to the side. I've seen pole wars where it's two poles fighting or two spears fighting for control, and it's kind of hilarious how that works out. But what you want to do is you want to try to just push it down, especially if you can push the tip, because even if their pole is sturdy, you see how easy the pole goes down. If I hit here, it's not going down as much, but with the tip, it just goes. So if you're able to get that near the tip area and just push it away, and that's it, then only go for that tip and try to deflect it as much as possible. And then when you deflect it, you see that the spear goes way over here. You can deflect it where it goes out. They lose their balance, stumble, and then you stab. So that would be a great way of doing it if you have a shorter range. If you have a longer range, you want to try to avoid that. Usually if you have a longer range, your spear is going to be heavier, so you might want to, in these situations, make your spear's presence there so that everyone sees it and get the benefit of ABP, always be poking, but you don't have the chance of them deflecting your pole. And if you are using your pole or spear, you have to be very aware of the fact that they're going to try to get the tip. So if you want to go around and then stab, you can do that. It's a little hard, especially with longer spears. They're not very maneuverable, but the best way to do it by far to keep your efficiency without being affected by a smaller pole is to just take a step back, hide behind your shield wall, and poke, because even if that pole is knocked down, you can step back and then pull your spear so that you'll be fine. The worst thing that would happen is if you're going to kill them, they hit, they knock, and off. You're dead at this point. You're dead, or you're gonna lose an arm, and already I kind of want to drop it because this is not very effective. Now, we've talked a lot about spears, but what about two-handed swords? Well, two-handed swords in Belegarth are actually viable. In many different LARPs, they're really not, because they're unwieldy, they're not very fast, and they don't present you with a lot of options, and generally just a single short sword is better than a two-handed sword. But in Belegarth, two-handed swords are awesome. See, two-handed swords are the only ways to break shields. So while you can go and you can try to get those extra snipes on people with two-handed swords, that's not really your goal. Your goal with a two-handed sword is to bust shields. Now, we've gone over this before in a previous video on how you would bust shields, just enough force, two hits on a shield and it's gone, and you have to say red. And it really depends on where you're going. It could be to a point where I just hit and it's a solid hit and people will take it. But according to the rules in most places, you'll have to get basically a baseball swing up in order to knock and stagger that person back in order for it to count as a red hit on a shield. Now, when you swing with a two-handed weapon, most people in Belegarth take it as a baseball and just swing. It's extremely easy to see where it's coming. It's extremely easy to dodge if you wind up like this. Now, since shieldmen can easily avoid it, instead of making it super obvious, maybe we should do something about that. Because even if I do this heavy swing, all it takes, as we found out with the spear, is someone to just hit the tip or hit near the tip, and then it's deflected, I'm down, and then they just kill me. So instead of just using shoulders, we should use hips. Now, kind of like how the spear did to push, with a two-handed sword, what we want to do is we want to use our hips to swing. Instead of this wide baseball swing that I usually see a lot in Belegarth, instead, wouldn't it be best to be able to come and just boom, with that same power that you would have from a normal baseball swing? Actually, that's probably more power because I'm stepping through. And once again, using my hips. Now, if you step with your motion, I'm stepping towards you, don't see my swing. I'm using my hips and then my shoulder. This is normal for almost every shot, but when you go to swing, all you need to do is just boom, and that alone should be a lot of force. If you need a little bit more, then just bring your sword back a little bit more, do the same thing, boom, and that has way more force to it. So that alone should stagger someone or make someone have an issue. Now, if you're worried about the end result of, I'm still kind of like this, I can still back up because I'm not having it where my sword's deflected and I just, And if I want to swing, then I can still do a heavy shot and then come back. So I can have a secondary strike if I want. And I could just do rapid fire, bam, and just two hit on the shield. Now, I wouldn't want to do that normally just by myself, 1v1, but with a line, you could get some rapid just shield destruction with that way. So depending on how much force people need and how good you are with using your body. But what if the enemy has an annoying spear that makes you not be able to get there because their spear is longer than your two-handed sword? See, two-handed swords are meant to be more hefty to give that extra weight as they go down to hit that shieldman. Or even if you want to maintain your balance, just side hit and then come back. See how I'm stepping backwards when I'm trying to recover? Well, with spears, they outrange you. So what you can do is you can take that roll of a shorter spear and try to just deflect that spear, that annoying spear that's coming to hit your allies. And as you deflect it and your allies realize that you've got their back there, you can push forward into the enemy lines, make that spear kind of useless, and then just go to town and destroy shields, do other stuff, and actually be able to engage. Because in a closer combat quarters, you are more useful to your team than a spear is. A spear needs range, finesse, time, and the ability to poke, while a two-handed sword is more about just get out of here as you just try to murder them. Well, not necessarily murder them, but murder their shields. And once you murder their shields, well, a shieldman without a shield is an easy target because they just have a single sword. And even if they have another sword, well, there's a reason why we don't really talk about Florentine and Belegarth, because they don't really work well on the line. So those are a few tips on using two-handed weapons for you in Belegarth. Once again, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'd love to hear what you think we should cover next. We will be going into some more Belegarth tips, some Amtgard tips, even looking back a little bit to Vampire the Masquerade tips as our first LARP, and we'll be going over some extra tips on those LARPs as well in the next few videos. Tell us what LARP you like. Tell us which of the three you think are best, and also tell us which LARP you actually play. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Until next time, keep LARPing.